Maybe this morning you did the same thing, tilted your head, adjusted a few strands of hair, and paused. Not because something looked wrong exactly, but because something didn't quite feel right. Maybe you've cut it before for a new job, a new phase of life, or because someone once kindly said, "This suits your age." And you smiled, nodded, walked out of the salon, but your heart didn't quite follow. Time passed. Your hair grew back. But each time you think about changing it again, that quiet voice returns. Should I? At this age, this video isn't here to tell you whether to cut your hair or keep it long. It's here to ask a different kind of question one most of us never thought to ask. What if the choice you've been making wasn't really yours? And what if the woman you've been missing is still right there, waiting just beneath the surface, just behind the mirror? Let's begin, because sometimes the truth doesn't shock you. It gently brings you back to yourself. 1. The myth we never questioned. It was a quiet winter morning, and the soft light slipped through the thin curtain in the bathroom. She stood before the mirror, silver strands resting loosely on the shoulders of her pale blue robe. Her eyes had grown familiar with the way her features changed over time, but this morning they paused a little longer. Not on the wrinkles, not on the thinning skin, but on her hair, the only part of her reflection still long enough to whisper something of who she used to be. And then, like an old needle finding its groove again, the question returned, not loudly, not suddenly, but gently, and clearly enough. Maybe it's time to cut it. She couldn't remember how many times she'd told herself that over the years. Just that the last time was after the birth of her second child. Her once thick, glossy hair had become a nuisance, always in the way of sleepless nights, baby cries, and bottles to clean. Just to keep it practical, she said. But the truth was, it helped her feel less like she was still living for herself. Before that, it was the day she accepted a new management position at the hospital. Someone had said, "You should cut your hair, it'll look more professional." She nodded. And so she cut it. Like a silent ritual for stepping into the role of a woman with responsibility, with structure, with age. And yet this morning, at 62, with all those roles played out, she still heard that same whisper. The one that has followed women for generations. That after a certain age, long hair no longer fits. The strange thing is, no one ever says it outright. It's not printed in any book, not written into any law. But somehow, society has carved it into our collective minds, with images, with glances, with compliments laced in quiet expectations. Through the 20th century, from vintage ads to screen legends, the respectable woman always wore her hair short, tidy, contained. They called it elegance, maturity, proof that you were ready to move into a new chapter where practicality mattered more than dreaming. Even in salons today, stylists are still trained to give appropriate advice to older women, which usually means shorter cuts, darker tones, safer choices. Not out of malice, just repetition of a standard baked into the culture. That short hair is the rule after 50. And long hair, careless. Too youthful, not serious. Or worse, desperate to hold on to youth. But when we look closely, really closely at this belief, we find it isn't grounded in aesthetic logic or health concerns. There's no study proving long hair makes a woman look older. No natural law that says hair must shorten with time. The only thing keeping this myth alive is our history of managing how women are allowed to look, sometimes with sweet suggestions, sometimes with silent judgment. Behind that harmless pair of scissors lies a long history of expectancy about knowing your place. And cutting your hair, more often than not, isn't just a makeover, it's a quiet surrender. To roles, to norms, to what's considered age-appropriate. So the real question isn't, is short hair wrong? Of course not. Short hair can be stunning, expressive, just right when it's chosen by you. But if the only reason for the cut is because it's time, then maybe it's time to pause. Not to rebel, just to ask, do I actually want this? And some mornings, you don't need to cut anything. Just standing in front of the mirror and not cutting is an act of quiet courage, not in defiance of anyone else, but in allegiance to yourself. And sometimes from that small, silent moment, A part of you begins to come home. 2. The woman in the mirror. That Sunday afternoon, the air was cool and still. She sat alone in her old kitchen, a soft golden light pouring through the window, catching the edge of a small mirror on the wall. On the table sat a cup of tea long gone cold, and her hands, slightly trembling, gently stroked the length of her silver-streaked hair. Slowly, as if each strand held a memory she hadn't yet named. At 17, her hair reached the middle of her back, soft chestnut strands, chasing the wind as she pedaled her bicycle down dirt roads. Back then, she didn't think much about hair. There were no right styles, no rules about what was age-appropriate. Long hair simply meant freedom. It was how she felt alive, hopeful, hungry to step into the world. And then time passed. Each season a little shorter, each responsibility a quiet cut. Though her later hairstyles were tidy, clean, practical, there was always something missing in the mirror. Not regret, just a silent ache for a version of herself that once felt more wild, more instinctive, less contained. At some point, they started saying long hair doesn't suit older women, that it drags down the face, pulls the features, makes you look tired. But what they didn't say is this: long hair, when chosen with intention and cared for with grace, can do exactly the opposite. Soft, long layers, especially when lightly feathered, can hug the face, blur harsh lines, and invite light back in. For women with silver or gray hair, length is not forbidden, it's powerful. When the light touches those strands just right, they shimmer with a kind of depth and reflection that no boxed black dye can replicate. A gentle wave here, a subtle taper along the cheekbone, a soft, bright tone hidden near the ends. All these details don't just flatter the face. They bring back movement. And movement in the language of design is always a sign of life. Long hair, if healthy and softly luminous, can frame the face in a way that's elegant, distinctive, and most importantly feminine, without trying too hard. Like a silk scarf draped across the shoulder, not to hide anything, but to draw the eye in closer, more tenderly. That afternoon, she rose from her chair and stepped toward the mirror. Her hair was no longer as smooth as it once was. It had gone coarse in places, a bit wiry, and thinner in patches. But when she tilted her head, one strand slipped across her cheekbone and came to rest gently at her jawline, and in that moment, she saw something. Not beauty in the traditional sense, but truth. Her own eyes looking through the veil of hair, seeing not a memory, but a piece of herself that never left. Because sometimes what we're searching for isn't the past itself, but a way to bring it with us. To remind ourselves we were never truly gone. So if tomorrow morning, as you brush your hair, you find your gaze softening, just because a single long strand grazes your shoulder, maybe you don't need to change a thing. Maybe you just need to keep it. Like a bridge connecting the girl you were to the woman you're still becoming. 3. The cut that disconnected me. The salon was quiet that day. Not from lack of customers, but because every soft conversation melted into the hum of hair dryers and the faint scent of dye in the air. She sat before the mirror, draped in a crinkly nylon cape, her hands gently gripping the armrests. The overhead lights cast a pale glow over her face, washing out the color a little, but not the quiet gentleness in her expression. The stylist walked up behind her, smiling brightly, shiny scissors in hand. "Ready?" she chirped. "We'll do the pixie cut you sent me, right? It's fresh, modern, perfect for your age." She nodded. But even as she did, she wasn't sure it was a true yes. It was just easier. Easier than explaining how she'd spent weeks second-guessing, lying awake at night wondering if she was holding on to something she should have let go. Easier than admitting that, despite the dryness, the tangles, the thinning ends, that long hair still made her feel like herself. The scissors touched for the first time. A quiet snip. The first lock of hair fell to the floor. It didn't hurt, but something inside her felt like it had just dropped. Light, but unmistakable. No one says short hair isn't beautiful. In fact, a well-cut pixie can highlight the cheekbones, brighten the face, even lend a chic and elegant edge. But here's what people rarely say. Short hair doesn't automatically fit just because you've reached a certain age. So many cropped styles recommended for women over 60 aren't chosen because they align with personality, but because they're safe, manageable, and sometimes erasing. Heavy bobs without layers that hug the face too tightly may seem tidy, but they can rob a woman's features of softness. Pixie cuts with harsh, blunt lines, and no movement can unintentionally highlight the very angles we wish to soften. Some are styled too full, too lifted, trying to fake youth, but end up crowding the face, leaving no room to breathe. She thought short hair would feel freeing, refreshing. But every morning since the cut, when she looked in the mirror, she saw a performance beautiful, maybe, but not her own. One morning, she ran into an old friend. The friend paused, stared for a moment, and said, "You've changed." She smiled, a quiet, half-hearted smile she didn't even notice. Yeah, I guess it was time. But that answer, who was it really for? Later, back home, she stepped into the bathroom, unclipped her hair, and stared into the mirror that had seen her through decades. Her hair, now cropped to her ears, no longer tangled or clung to her shoulders. But neither did her fingers run through its familiar length. Something felt strange, not because the haircut was bad, but because it no longer felt like home. Hair grows back. But the moment we sever a piece of ourselves, we don't always get that back so easily. That was when she understood. Choosing to renew yourself isn't wrong. But it must come from the heart, not from outside expectations, not from a number, and never from fear of holding on too long. A haircut should be a beginning, not a quiet surrender. And if one day you find yourself sitting in that chair, staring into the mirror, unsure if you're ready, that hesitation is all the sign you need. Wait until the moment you cut, not to please, not to conform, but to return to yourself. 4. What stylists won't tell you. The new salon was sleek, with polished wooden floors and large frameless mirrors catching the overhead light and bouncing it softly across the room. Laughter and conversation swirled through the space as women sat mid-color or mid-cut, their hair transforming in real time. She sat quietly in her chair, a light jacket draped over her arm, silver hair falling past her shoulders like a soft ribbon of silk. A young stylist approached, bright-eyed, full of energy, already reading between the lines of her client's story. "So, what change are we thinking about today?" she asked, voice light but certain. The woman smiled, hesitating just a little. "I've been considering keeping it long, but I'm not sure. My hair's very thin. Maybe it just makes me look older." The stylist nodded quickly, confident in her reply. "If it's thin, shorter is better. Fresher, more youthful. Maybe a soft pixie or a chin-length bob, something light and modern." The woman nodded faintly, but something inside her dimmed. Not because the stylist was wrong, but because the words felt prescripted, like a response she'd heard many times before. Like every time she reached out, hoping to be understood, she was gently redirected toward a version of what fits a certain age group, rather than what fit her. The truth is, even the most talented stylists, those with taste, with training, carry with them beliefs shaped by beauty schools, industry norms, and culture, that women over 50 should go short for practicality, that long hair drags the face down, that thin hair needs to be cut to hide flaws. But what they often don't say, perhaps because they've never been taught to see it, is that long hair isn't the problem. What's wrong isn't the length, it's when long hair is lifeless, shapeless, still. What's wrong is holding on to length out of fear or nostalgia, not out of love. Long hair can absolutely be youthful, elegant, even modern when given movement. Light, subtle layers that softly fall around the face. A bit of wave at the ends or gentle texture throughout to add volume and flow. For women with naturally silver or gray hair, keeping that length and pairing it with soft light and natural shine can actually brighten the face and eyes more effectively than any dye. What matters isn't the inches, it's the energy. Hair doesn't need to be thick to be long. It needs to be light, soft, and responsive to your movement. It should flow with your features, not weigh them down. And that decision, no pair of scissors can make it for you. Only you know what your hair's holding. That day, she didn't cut her hair. She walked out with it still trailing softly down her back, a little dry at the ends, a bit tangled against her collar, but for the first time in years, her heart felt calm. Because she hadn't let someone else's recommendation rewrite who she was. The stylist had been kind, professional. But not everyone holding scissors understands the memories held in a strand of hair. Not everyone has lived a story where hair was kept for reasons even she couldn't name. Maybe faith, maybe grief, maybe just something unspoken. And so, she chose to let it grow. Not to rebel, but to listen to a quieter voice from within. Sometimes the most beautiful choice isn't to reinvent yourself in someone else's eyes. It's to keep something that's still yours, even if it's old, even if no one else understands. Because in the end, the one holding the scissors may shape the style, but the one who touches your hair every morning and every night is you. 5. When long hair becomes a love letter. That morning, the sun was still gentle. A soft golden light streamed through sheer white curtains, drifting with the breeze like a quiet breath. She sat at the edge of her bed, silently brushing her hair. With each stroke, the long silver strands slid through her slender fingers, smooth and calm, like a river that already knew its path. No rush, no effort, just familiarity. She was 73, and her hair nearly to her waist was no longer a statement, nor a rebellion. It was a part of her life, a part of her peace. People often asked, "Doesn't it feel heavy? Why not cut it short? Lighten it up?" She would just smile. "I don't keep my hair for convenience. I keep it because it still makes me feel beautiful." No one says having long hair after 60 is easy. The body changes. Hair becomes drier, finer, less full than it once was. But that doesn't mean we have to let it go. It simply means we must learn to love it differently. Long hair at this age doesn't ask to impress. It asks to be cared for gently. A sulfate-free shampoo, a deep conditioning mask once a week, not out of luxury, but because she deserves it. A silk pillowcase so she wakes up without frizz. Soft face-framing layers, not to stand out, but to feel alive, to feel present. Some mornings, she barely brushes it, just ties it loosely with a silk ribbon. Some afternoons, it falls freely down her back, shimmering silver in the sun. And when she walks through the neighborhood, the children call her Story Queen because she looks like someone who stepped out of a book no one wants to close. She never forced her hair into perfect form. It has messy days, flat days, days it surprises her. But she leaves it that way because that's her too. A version that doesn't need editing. Long hair isn't a refusal to age. It's an intentional acceptance of it. It's a way of saying, I can grow older and still be me. Just softer now. Truer to how I feel, no longer shaped by how others think I should look. Once her daughter asked, "Mom, do you think you'll ever cut it short?" She put the brush down, looked at her child, and whispered, "Maybe one day, if I stop seeing myself in the mirror. But right now, I still do." And really, long hair after 60 is no longer a style. It's a love letter, written in time. Written in the quiet moments standing before a mirror, not searching for flaws, but gently reminding herself, I'm still here. There is still light, still softness, still freedom. Maybe one day she will cut it. But if she does, it won't be because someone said she should. It'll be because she's ready to begin a new chapter. For now, her hair flowing like memory is how she holds on to herself. Gently, silently, and with quiet strength. And if tomorrow morning you brush your hair and feel something soften inside you, then maybe, just maybe, you've written your own love letter. One that never needs to be sent, just kept. Maybe even now you're still tying your hair back the same way you always do. A simple knot, a familiar gesture, something no one really notices. But if at any moment during this video you paused, even just for a second, then perhaps somewhere inside, there's still a part of you waiting to be called back by name. If you've ever tried holding on to your long hair after 60 even just once, leave a 1 below. If you never have, 0 is enough. I read them all. No need to say anything more. And if one day you want me to tell another story, not about cutting or keeping your hair, but about that feeling when you walk out of a salon and, for the first time in years, see yourself again in the mirror, just whisper something. A few words, enough for me to know you're still here. And if today, even for the briefest moment, you remembered how radiant you once felt, then I'm still here too. Whenever you're ready to return, And if these quiet conversations have touched something in you and you think they might touch someone else, consider following this channel. Not for me, but for that day in the future when you might need someone to remind you you never lost your beauty. Not for a moment.